My grandson Jayden's innocent 7-year-old eyes looked up at me and said, "Grandma Gloria, why didn't you tell me you were moving to your new place?" As he handed me the phone, he added, "It's right here in Daddy's messages." That one little sentence was about to change my life forever, unraveling a web of deception that had been spinning around me for months. Let me take you back to where this all began, because understanding how I got to that moment requires knowing the whole truth about what my family had been planning behind my back. It was one of Atlanta's most beautiful June evenings. The Georgian Terrace Hotel was dressed in white roses and golden lights, looking like something straight out of a fairy tale. The wedding reception for my son Marcus's second marriage to Keisha seemed like such a happy occasion. As a 65-year-old retired teacher who had spent 4 decades shaping young minds in the Atlanta public school system, all I wanted was to see everyone in my family happy and thriving. I had worked so hard to get to this point in my life. After my husband Harold passed away 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I thought I had grieved properly and found my footing again. I had my little routine, tending to my garden in Cascade Heights, volunteering at the church on Sundays, having coffee with my neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, every Tuesday morning. Life was simple but meaningful. Jayden, Marcus's 7-year-old son from his first marriage, had been sitting quietly all evening at the children's table. His biological mother, Sarah, had died in a car accident when he was just 3 years old, and I had helped Marcus raise that boy like he was my own grandchild. Seeing his new stepmother, Keisha, treating him with such kindness and patience all evening made my heart warm. I was so pleased about that, thinking maybe this new marriage would give Jayden the stable mother figure he'd been missing. The child was sitting in the corner playing with his daddy's phone, which wasn't unusual. Marcus always let Jayden play games on his phone during grown-up events to keep him entertained. I watched him from across the room, this beautiful little boy in his tiny black suit, and felt such pride and love. But then he walked over to me with that confused, innocent expression that only children can have when they've stumbled across something they don't quite understand. "What do you mean I'm moving to a new place?" I asked Jayden, my heart starting to race with a fear I couldn't quite name yet. "It says so right here," he said innocently, handing me the phone with those small, trusting hands. "Daddy and Aunt Dorothy were talking about it earlier. They found a real nice place for you, Grandma. But I thought you loved your house." As I started reading the messages on that phone, my whole world began to crumble piece by piece. The conversation between Marcus and my sister Dorothy was laid out in devastating detail. "Dorothy, are Mama's papers ready? We need to get her to sign tomorrow before she changes her mind." Marcus, "Yeah, the lawyer got everything set up just like we planned. We reserved a spot at Shady Oak Care Home. They said they can take her by the end of the week." Dorothy, "Good. Mama doesn't suspect nothing, does she? She still thinks this is all about helping her." Marcus, "Nah, Keisha's been playing her part real good. Mama thinks she's got good intentions and really cares about the family. She has no idea we've been planning this for months." Dorothy, "Perfect. Once we get that house, we can finally start living the way we deserve. I'm tired of struggling while she sits in that big house all by herself." I kept scrolling, my hands starting to shake as I discovered message after message detailing their conspiracy. There were discussions about which furniture they wanted to keep, arguments about how to split the money from selling my house, and cold calculations about the minimum amount they needed to pay for my care at the nursing home. But what hurt most was reading Marcus talk about me like I was already dead. "Once we get Mama out of the way, we can renovate that whole place. Keisha's already picked out paint colors. My own son and the sister I had trusted most in this world were plotting to put me in a nursing home and steal my 40-year home in Cascade Heights right from under me. The house where I had raised Marcus as a single mother after his father left when he was 12. The house where I had nursed my late husband Harold through his final illness. The house where every room held precious memories of the life I had built through decades of hard work and sacrifice. "Jayden," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady so I wouldn't scare the child. Nobody else saw these messages, did they? No, ma'am, Grandma, he said innocently, tilting his head with that concerned expression. I was just playing games on Daddy's phone like always. But then these messages kept popping up and I saw your name, so I started reading them. I can read pretty good now, you know. Right then, all that happy music, laughter, and toasting in the wedding hall just didn't sound right to me anymore. The jazz band that had been playing gentle background music now sounded mournful. The clinking of champagne glasses felt like nails on a chalkboard. The warm yellow lights that had seemed so festive now felt harsh and exposing. My own family had been scheming against me for months, maybe even years, and I had been completely blind to it. I thought back to all the strange conversations over the past few months. Marcus suggesting I might want to downsize for my own safety. Keisha casually asking about my monthly expenses and whether I ever got lonely in such a big house. Dorothy mentioning how nice some of the senior living facilities look these days, with their organized activities and medical staff on hand. I had interpreted all of these comments as loving concern from family members who cared about my well-being as I aged. Now I realize they had been carefully laying the groundwork for this betrayal, testing my resistance and planning their approach. I saw Keisha walking my way, her white wedding dress flowing behind her like she was floating on air. She looked radiant, but now I could see something calculating behind those bright eyes. Mrs. Washington, how you doing tonight? You looking so happy and elegant, she said with that sweet smile I now recognized as completely fake. This has been such a beautiful evening. Marcus and I are so grateful you could be here to celebrate with us. The irony of her words hit me like a physical blow. Here she was on her wedding day, talking about gratitude while planning to have me shipped off to a nursing home within the week. Keisha, I said as calmly as I could manage, I got a question for you, honey. What you think about older folks like myself? You think they better off staying in their own homes where they're comfortable, or you think they should be in those care facilities? I watched her face carefully, and I saw it. Just for a split second, panic flashed across her features before she caught herself and rearranged her expression into one of concerned thoughtfulness. Well, of course the safest place is always what's best, she said, choosing her words carefully. When you get older, sometimes you can't protect yourself like you used to. Sometimes you might forget to turn off the stove or fall down the stairs or have a medical emergency with nobody around to help. It's really about what's safest and most responsible. Every word felt like a nail being driven into a coffin they had already built for me in their minds. She was reciting arguments they had clearly rehearsed, probably with Marcus and Dorothy, as they planned this whole scheme. Marcus walked up to us right then, looking handsome in his black tuxedo, but I could see tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there earlier in the evening. Mama, what y'all talking about over here? He asked, and I could hear a note of worry in his voice. You two getting to know each other better? Son, I said, looking him directly in the eyes, the same brown eyes I'd gazed into when he was a baby, when he was a scared little boy after his father left, when he graduated high school, and I was so proud I cried. Jayden just told me some real interesting things, something about Shady Oak Care Home. You know anything about that? Marcus's face went white as a sheet, and I watched him struggle to find words. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Mama, what that's supposed to mean, he stammered. Why would Jayden... It means, I continued, my voice getting stronger as my shock transformed into cold anger, that you and your sister Dorothy and your new wife here have been making plans for my life without bothering to include me in the conversation. It means you've been trying to steal my house right from under me while pretending you care about my well-being. Dorothy appeared as if summoned by some invisible signal, walking up to our little group with that worried expression she had perfected over the years. My sister had always been good at looking concerned when she was really just protecting her own interests. Gloria, what's going on over here? She asked, glancing nervously between Marcus and Keisha. You look upset, honey. This is supposed to be a happy day. You too, Dorothy. I asked, looking straight at my sister, the woman who had helped me through Harold's death, who had held my hand at his funeral, who I had trusted with my deepest fears and hopes. You in on this game too? All three of them were looking at each other with barely concealed panic now, and I could see the wheels turning as they tried to figure out how much I knew and what their next move should be. But I was done playing games. I stood up from my chair, and despite being 65 years old and barely 5'4", I felt taller and stronger than I had in years. Listen here, I said, in that firm voice I had used to command respect in classrooms full of rowdy teenagers for 4 decades. I taught school for 40 years. I raised thousands of children, including some who came from homes where nobody believed in them. I buried a husband and raised a son mostly on my own. I know exactly how to handle my own house, my own life, and my own decisions. Little Jayden, who had been watching this whole exchange with the wide-eyed fascination that children have for adult drama they don't fully understand, took my hand in his small one. "Grandma, you ain't going nowhere, are you?" he asked, and I could hear real worry in his voice. "I like visiting you at your house. You make the best chocolate chip cookies and you let me help in the garden." "No, baby," I said, squeezing his hand gently. "I ain't going nowhere." But some folks about to learn they need to rethink their plans. The next morning, while Marcus and Keisha were probably sleeping off their wedding celebrations, I was already dressed and ready for action. I called my lawyer, Mr. Thompson, who had handled Harold's estate and had been managing my legal affairs for years. "Mr. Thompson," I said when he answered his phone, "I need to see you first thing this morning. We got some urgent business to discuss about my house and my affairs." When I met with him an hour later in his downtown office, I explained the whole situation. He listened with growing concern and anger. "Mrs. Washington," he said, shaking his head, "what they were planning is called elder abuse, and it's a serious crime. The fact that they were trying to manipulate you into signing documents without proper legal representation could have resulted in charges against all of them. We spent the morning making sure my house deed was locked up tight so that only I could sign it, and only with proper legal representation present. We also discovered that Marcus and Keisha had indeed taken out significant loans for their wedding expenses and had listed my house as potential collateral without my knowledge or consent. They were counting on having access to your house to secure their debts, Mr. Thompson explained. If this plan had worked, you would have been responsible for their financial obligations. I left that office feeling both vindicated and heartbroken. I called Shady Oak Care Home and canceled the reservation that had been made in my name without my knowledge. The woman on the phone seemed confused. "Ma'am, your son called just yesterday to confirm the move-in date for this Friday," she said. "He seemed very concerned about your safety living alone." "Well, you can tell my son that his mama's doing just fine living alone and she ain't moving nowhere she don't want to go," I replied. Then came the hardest call of all. I dialed Dorothy's number, my finger hesitating over each digit as I thought about 60 years of sisterhood that was about to come to an end. "Sister," I said when she answered, "I think you and me need to have a conversation about what happened last night." We met at the little diner where we used to take our children for Sunday breakfast after church, back when our kids were small and our lives were simpler. Dorothy looked tired and older than her 63 years, and I could see guilt written all over her face. "Gloria," she started, "I can explain everything. It ain't what it looks like." "Then explain it to me," I said, sitting across from her in the same booth where we used to solve the world's problems over coffee and biscuits. "Explain to me how you could plan to have me put away like some old piece of furniture you don't want anymore." When I confronted Dorothy face to face, I learned the real reason behind her betrayal, and it cut deeper than I had expected. "Gloria," she said, tears streaming down her face, "you always had everything I wanted. When we were kids, you were the smart one, the one Mama and Daddy were proud of. You went to college, became a teacher, had respect in the community. You married Harold, who treated you like a queen, and y'all had that beautiful house. She wiped her nose with a napkin, looking more like the jealous little sister I remembered from childhood than the grown woman she had become. I'm 63 years old and I'm still renting a one-bedroom apartment, Gloria. I never had a career, never had a husband who could provide for me proper, never had nothing that was really mine. When Marcus told me he needed help convincing you to move to a care home, when he said he'd give me part of your house if I helped him, I wanted to see you somewhere else for once. I wanted to finally have something beautiful that was mine. My sister's words cut me deep. 60 years of sisterhood destroyed by jealousy and greed that had apparently been festering for decades. Dorothy, I said, my voice thick with emotion, if you had just talked to me, if you had told me you were struggling, I would have helped you. I would have found a way to make sure you were taken care of. But instead, you chose to try and destroy my life to get what you wanted. She cried and apologized, reaching across the table to try to take my hands, but I pulled them away. The trust was broken, and we both knew it could never be repaired. I'm sorry, Gloria. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted. You wanted my life, I finished for her, and you were willing to take it from me instead of building your own. That afternoon, Marcus and Keisha called me, probably having discovered that their carefully laid plans had fallen apart. Marcus sounded panicked when I answered the phone. Mama, we need to talk. There's been some kind of misunderstanding about everything. Can we come over? You can come if you want, I said, but there ain't no misunderstanding. I know exactly what y'all were planning, and I know exactly what I think about it. When they arrived at my house an hour later, they looked like they hadn't slept. Keisha's wedding glow was completely gone, and Marcus looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. Mama, Marcus started, we just wanted what was best for you. You're getting older, and we were worried about you living in this big house all by yourself. What if something happened? Best for me? I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Let me tell you what would have been best for me, son. Having my family talk to me like I'm a grown woman who can make her own decisions. Having my family respect me enough to include me in conversations about my own life. Having my family love me enough to be honest with me instead of lying and scheming behind my back. Keisha tried to interject. Mrs. Washington, we really do care about you. We were just trying to make sure you were safe and taken care of. Safe? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think I'd be safe in some nursing home where I don't know nobody, where I can't come and go as I please? Where I gotta ask permission to make a cup of tea in my own kitchen? You think that's safer than being in the house I've lived in for 40 years, where I know every neighbor, where I got Mrs. Johnson checking on me every day? I looked at Marcus. This man who had once been the little boy who crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, who I had held when he cried about his father leaving, who I had cheered for at every baseball game and graduation ceremony. And you, Marcus, selling my house without my permission, acting like you don't want me around, then shipping me off to a nursing home so you and your wife can live the life you want? That's what you call taking care of me. The silence that followed was heavy with shame and regret, but I could see they still didn't fully understand what they had done wrong. They were focused on the fact that their plan had failed, not on the betrayal and hurt they had caused. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Jayden and asked if he wanted to spend the night at Grandma's house. When Marcus tried to object, I cut him off. That child is welcome in my house anytime he wants to come, I said firmly. He's the only one in this family who's been honest with me lately. When Jayden arrived with his little overnight bag, chattering excitedly about staying at Grandma's house, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in months. Grandma, he said as I was tucking him into the guest bed that had been his father's room when Marcus was growing up. You're a real strong woman. Daddy says you used to be his teacher before you were his mama. That's right, baby, I said, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. Sometimes being a teacher means helping people learn lessons they don't want to learn. Are you teaching Daddy a lesson now? He asked with that innocent directness that children have. I'm trying to, sweetheart. I'm trying to. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Word traveled fast through our community about what had happened. Some people were supportive, telling me I had done the right thing by standing up for myself. Others whispered that I was being too harsh on my family, that blood should forgive blood no matter what. Pastor Williams from our church came to visit me 3 days after the wedding. He sat in my living room, the same room where Harold and I used to host Sunday dinners for the whole family, and tried to counsel me about forgiveness. Sister Gloria, he said in that gentle voice he used for pastoral visits, I know you're hurting, and you have every right to be, but the Bible teaches us to forgive our family, to turn the other cheek. Pastor, I replied, the Bible also teaches us about wisdom, about not casting pearls before swine, about protecting ourselves from those who would do us harm. I forgive them in my heart, but that don't mean I got to let them keep trying to hurt me. A week later, Marcus came to see me alone. He looked haggard and defeated, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Mama, he said, we made a real big mistake. Keisha and me, we've been talking, and we realized we went about everything all wrong. We want to make it right. Yes, you did make a mistake, I said. A mistake that showed me exactly who y'all really are when you think you can get away with something. But we can fix this, Mama? We can start over. I'll move back home, help you with the house, make sure you got everything you need. I looked at my son, this man who had just tried to steal my home and my independence, and I felt a sadness so deep it seemed to go all the way to my bones. Marcus, I said, you can't fix trust once it's broken like this. You can't take back the fact that you looked at your own mama and saw an obstacle to get rid of instead of a person who deserved respect. You can't undo the months of planning and scheming and lying. So, what are you saying, Mama? He asked, and I could hear desperation in his voice. You never gonna forgive me? You never gonna let me make this right? I'm saying that forgiveness don't mean forgetting. I'm saying that love don't mean letting people walk all over you. I'm saying that some lessons got to be learned the hard way, and this is yours to learn. And what about Jayden? He asked, playing what he thought was his trump card. You gonna keep my son away from me because you mad at me? Jayden is welcome in my house anytime he wants to come, I said firmly. That child ain't done nothing wrong, and he ain't gonna be punished for y'all's mistakes. But he's also gonna learn what it looks like when people treat each other with respect and honesty, and right now, he ain't learning that from you. I had to cut Dorothy out of my life completely. 60 years of being sisters ended because she chose greed over love, jealousy over loyalty. When she called me crying, begging for another chance, I had to hang up the phone. When she showed up at my door, I had to not answer it. It was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, but I knew that some boundaries, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. The months that followed were lonely sometimes, but they were also peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. I didn't have to wonder what my family was really thinking about me. I didn't have to decode their conversations for hidden meanings. I didn't have to worry about who I could trust with my thoughts and feelings. Jayden became my regular weekend visitor. Marcus tried to use these visits to get back into my good graces, but I made it clear that my relationship with my grandson was separate from any relationship I might or might not have with his father in the future. Mrs. Johnson, my neighbor, became like a sister to me. She'd watched the whole drama unfold from next door, and she made sure I knew I wasn't alone. Gloria, she told me one Tuesday morning over our regular coffee, you did the right thing. A woman got to stand up for herself, especially when her own family won't stand up for her. I joined a support group for seniors who had experienced family financial abuse. I learned that my story was far from unique, that families all across the country were trying to take advantage of their elderly relatives, using love and manipulation to get access to their homes and savings. The hardest part, said a woman named Betty, who had gone through something similar with her children, is accepting that the people who are supposed to love you the most can also be the ones who hurt you the worst. 6 months after that terrible wedding night, I got a letter from Keisha. She and Marcus were getting divorced, she wrote. The financial pressure of their debts, combined with the shame of what they had tried to do to me, had destroyed their marriage before it really began. I want you to know, she wrote, that I'm sorry for my part in what happened. I was scared about money, and I let that fear make me do things I knew were wrong. I hope someday you can forgive me. I read that letter 3 times, then folded it up and put it in my desk drawer. Forgiveness, I had learned, was a process, not a destination, but I'm still living happy and strong in my Cascade Heights home. I tend my garden every morning, have coffee with Mrs. Johnson every Tuesday, and volunteer at the church every Sunday. Jayden still comes to stay with me on weekends, and we bake cookies and work in the garden together. Real family, I've learned, is the people who love you and protect you and respect you for who you are, not the ones who see you as something to be managed or controlled or gotten rid of when you become inconvenient. And thanks to that little Jayden and his innocent honesty, I got saved from a betrayal that would have stolen not just my home, but my dignity and independence. My name is Gloria. I am 65 years old, and I have finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself. And you, what would you do if you were in my shoes? What would you do if you discovered your own family was planning to betray you like this? I would love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. I'm always curious about what y'all think, and also write me where you heard this story. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you. Stories about family, betrayal, forgiveness, and finding strength you didn't know you had. With heartfelt greetings. Until next time, Ruby